As the council is aware, we began on this project here several months ago, and this evening we are providing a report for the completion of what we're really calling Phase 1 and some preliminary recommendations to the council, and then asking how the council would wish to proceed with the project from here forward. I think the council is well aware, the appearances of the entryways to the city have been an area of concern for many years. The last significant beautification effort occurred back in 1998. At that time, there were some volunteer cleanup projects that were undertaken, and then we had the 3 entryway signs, the Welcome to Moscow signs that exist on the west, north, and east entrances that were installed at that point in time, along with the associated landscaping near those signs' placement. The southern sign was not installed at that time because there was the continued discussion about the potential realignment of US 95 south of Moscow, and the signs themselves were a substantial expense, and so it was decided to defer the installation of the south sign until that question had been answered, and I'm not sure the question has still yet been answered, but hopefully will be here in the near term. In the city's council's goal setting.
To interrupt you, Bill, that was 15 years ago?
That was 1998, correct.
Checking my math, thank you.
In the council's most recent goal-setting session for the fiscal FY13 year, the council developed a goal, or adopted a goal to develop improvement plans for the beautification of public right-of-way at city entrances by 2014. So this again has continued to be an interest and a concern to the community and the council, and is the reason why we're talking about this evening. We also had a conversation following the council's goal. Staff kind of came forward with a concept of how to scope the project and how to approach the project. And we had a conversation about whether we're talking about discrete entryways or we're talking about more continuous corridors as you enter the community down to the downtown core. And the council at that time agreed to look at this project from the perspective of these roadway corridors, the 4 main entry corridors as you move from the west or the east or the north or the south into Moscow and into the downtown area. So we're really looking at those entryways down to locations near the downtown core. And ultimately the purpose of the project is really to examine opportunities, study the appearance of the corridors, and identify actions that the city could take to positively impact the community's appearance and character. And that's really, at the end of the day, we're looking at what we can do to help improve the appearance of the community. As we looked at the project, we really broke it into 2 phases. Phase 1 was intended to identify locations for improvements that would improve the aesthetic appearance of the community. That could include soft or hardscape improvements, community identity creation, visitor wayfinding and resources, potentially looking at public art installations, focal projects, and really 2 kinds of projects that we characterize as focal projects. There may be those locations in the community are just very visually prominent, could have a significant impact if we were to look at some type of landscape or public art installation or improvement. And then there are other types of projects that we considered more corridor enhancements, and that's maybe looking at an overall roadway corridor. And, well, if we could just install street trees or do some limited landscaping along this corridor, that would help improve the appearance of that area. Phase 2 was really looking at concept design and cost estimate development. So once we had identified potential locations for projects, then we would develop some preliminary designs and cost estimates that would be included in the final report. It's important to recognize that there is no current funding for construction of these improvements. This is really just a planning project. The council had authorized some funding we'll get into in a little bit for the design and planning and cost estimating phases, but there really is nothing funded for construction at this point in time. And that certainly projects must be realistic, and we need to make sure we consider the full life cycle cost of any improvements, including the ongoing maintenance activities. So to provide a little bit of project progress to date, as I mentioned before, the council in the FY13 budget actually identified and budgeted $35,000 for professional services for the project. Staff, as I mentioned, developed a project scope and approach that was reviewed and approved by the council on March 4th of this year. The council approved it in somewhat of a phased approach in which the council authorized an expenditure of up to $10,000 for Phase 1 and up to $25,000 for Phase 2 of the project. Since then, staff conducted the RFQ process, selected Welsh Comer engineers as the design professionals to assist with the project, and the council approved that contract on August 5th of this year. We then formed a steering committee that included representatives from property owners, business owners, community members, Arts Commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, Chamber of Commerce to help guide and direct the project. And that steering committee steering committee has conducted 4 meetings over the course of the project so far on August 20th, 27th, September 24th, and October 9th. We also conducted a public open house meeting on September 18th, and we have now wrapped up or are near completion of Phase 1 and presenting some preliminary recommendations this evening and seeking direction from the council tonight. As I mentioned, the areas that we really are looking at are those entries from when you come from the rural areas out of town, across the city limit boundary to points that we identified as kind of when you enter the downtown core. So the corridors, and this covers both 95 South, 95 North, the Troy Highway, and the Pullman Road. Those green highlighted areas really are the extent of the areas that we have been identifying within that we're working on in the project. As I mentioned, we have a steering committee membership that includes Walter Steed from the City Council as the chair of the group, Melanie Zimmer from the University Inn as the vice chair. We have Michelle Fusen from Latah County, Ken Helm from the Idaho Transportation Department, Josh Larson from the Moscow Chamber of Commerce, Iris Mays from the City's Arts Commission, Jim Miller from Prime Land Cooperatives Cause and the Chamber of Commerce as well, Ray Pankoff from the University of Idaho, Nels Reese from Planning Zoning Commission, rounds out the group. We've also had staff support, myself and my staff from the Community Development Department. We've also had Kevin Lilly from Public Works and Tom Grunden from Parks and Recreation that has a lot of the maintenance responsibilities for landscape areas in the right-of-way, and then Kathleen Burns from the city's Arts Department. And that steering committee is an important role, and they've been doing a lot of work on the project. I'm very appreciative for their efforts and time putting into this project. But it's really important for this group to provide that project guidance and oversight, represent the community and project stakeholders, serve as project champions and ambassadors, and ultimately provide recommendations to the City Council. So they've been a great group to work with, and I've enjoyed working with them on this project. One of the first tasks when we started this project and sat down with the steering committee, certainly we introduced the project, what it was we were doing, what we were hoping to achieve at the end of the project, and then we gave them a homework assignment. And that homework assignment was really to go out and drive, visit, walk, bike these corridors and really try to look at the community with new eyes. Many of the people that are on the steering committee have been in the community for many numbers of years, and it's very easy to tune things out over a period of time. And so we had a homework assignment where we asked them to drive those corridors, record their impressions, be aware of where there were natural transitions from rural to suburban to urban areas, identify areas that they like and what they want to see more of, which we termed assets. Also identify areas that could be improved, which we identified as being opportunities. And also ask them to note where there were key prominent visual locations that could be community focal points, and those were areas we called focal projects, and where there are just general improvements through a corridor that could be considered our corridor improvements. Also asked them to note anything else that struck them as they were out looking at these areas. We gave them some sheets just looking at overall things for them to be considering. The difficult to see on this slide, but just overall the condition of the road. How well, what's the road condition? Is the surface in good repair? Is it potholed? What's the condition of the roadway edge? Is it a weed-lined ditch, or is it a curbed and sidewalk? What's the condition of the street signage, regulatory signage? Are there other amenities and features? Are there overhead utilities? Is the adjacent private signage appropriate? Is the adjacent site development attractive? Are the adjacent structures and uses appropriate and attractive? And all of these things are really what collectively help individuals as they visit the community form an opinion about the appearance of the community. And we also gave them maps of each of the quadrants. This is just a sample map of one of the members of the steering committee, where they went through and identified areas that they liked, they thought they were good assets, or areas where improvements could be obtained. And so this all this information was collected from all the steering committee members that conducted the exercise to kind of get their head in the game, get a sense of what things that maybe they hadn't noticed over the period of time, and help us as we move through that project. We then inputted all that information into a Google map so that they could collectively see everybody else's comments and look around and see what were common things that they have observed compared to what other members of the steering committee observed. And that kind of formed the foundation of framing the project as a whole. As I mentioned, we also conducted our public open house meeting on September 18th. It was from 5 to 7 p.m. in this room in council chambers. And we had about 30 or 40 participants that came in and out during that time period. We had it as an open house format. We had 7 poster stations. We had those that were welcome meeting overview station, project introduction. We had study maps of each of the study corridors. And we also had a station that had some example improvements to give ideas about potential opportunities that we could look at for improvement implementation within Moscow. We also had a dot exercise where we gave members who came a series of green dots and yellow dots. The green dots were to denote things that they liked in the corridors. The yellows were to denote areas they thought could be improved. And we gave everybody 3 blue dots that came, and those were to be used to identify their 3 highest priority locations. And really, we wanted to help this shape the projects that were recommended and suggested to the council. We also had some general comment cards that were available. Those comments are in the appendix of the report that's in your packet this evening. So if anybody wanted to provide us with more specific information, they were welcome to do so in that format. And then we displayed that for the rest of the week downstairs here at City Hall. As I mentioned, we had those stations. This first one, not that you can read it, was just the board for the project overview. This was the meeting format and gave directions and instructions on how to provide comments and where to place dots and how they could provide their input. And then we had those maps that identified. This is a sample map of the North Corridor, and this was the sample board we had for the different treatments examples to give some ideas about potential improvements that could be considered as part of the project. So these were samples of the boards that were provided that evening for the community to review. We had these are photographs of the individual maps, so it is a little bit difficult to see on the projector, but you can see that there are clusters of yellow dots or blue dots that identified areas of general interest. On the eastern corridor, as you moved into town, there were green dots located near the Mountain View intersection, or areas to the east of the Mountain View intersection. And really the concentration of blue dots identifying the highest priority and yellow dots were really focused down in that area, really from about Harrison moving west to the South Couplet area. As you looked at the north, we had a concentration of yellow and blue dots focused up near the Pintail to Rodeo area. There were a lot of green dots on the city entryway sign where people appreciated that. And then again, more concentration of yellow dots as you headed farther south, down near the intersection of E Street and on down to the North Couplet. Again, the highest priority locations were generally identified up in this location between Quail Run down to Rodeo, and then picking up again as you headed down some of the existing commercial development to the south.